Kwanzaa, and he's already covered certain aspects of that religious experience. And so, Dr. AAl-Hadid, let's pick up where we left off during the first segment and have you to continue our discussion.
Yeah, the key thing to understand in Kwanzaa is that Kwanzaa is literally a celebration of African-American culture, family, and community. So let's talk about the idea of culture. One of the things that Maulana Karenga observed in 1966 is that African Americans had an identity crisis. It was the era of black power. It was the era of the civil rights movement. And Maulana Karenga, along with some of the other nationalist groups such as the Nation of Islam and some of the Pan-Africanist group, they said, well, the key thing is not so much integration or desegregation. The most important thing for African Americans is we need to return to the values and the culture of, first of all, our ancient mothers and fathers from Africa, and secondly, to return to those values that we acquired once we got over here in the African diaspora, whether it was working on the plantations or during the period of Reconstruction. There were certain core values, you know, like reverence for ancestors, respect for elders, and sharing and caring. And so he wanted to see if we could put those values back together so that we could create a united front to wage struggle against white supremacy and racism, as opposed to the other groups who are trying to dismantle racism and capitalism through the process of assimilation and you know, integration. And so that, and when we speak of culture, we're talking about that structured and patterned way by which peoples of African descent carry on their lifestyles. It includes their values, their norms, their customs, their religion, their beliefs, their ideologies, their technology, everything that they do. Basically, you could say that culture is the personality of a people. And as you know, during that period of the of Jim Crow, one of the things that we use as a basis for unification is that we use our culture and we use our religious institutions. But now that the barriers of, the legal barriers of segregation have disappeared, we still need another way of coming together, because the paradigm is shifting now from a conversation about color and race to a conversation about culture and language.
Good.
So now we have to compete in the open society with various ethnic groups who are unified because of their ethnicity. Say, for example, the Hispanics constitute an ethnic group as opposed to a racial group, or the Japanese, the Chinese. All these groups are bonded together because of their ethnicity, more so than being bonded together because of a reaction to white supremacy or reaction to racism. And you can see how the other ethnic groups that have come over, say the Irish, they came over with their culture, they came over with a language. Or the Italians came over with a language and with a culture. And now we see the Hispanics are going very strong, and they are somewhat different than most Americans. First of all, their mother tongue is not English. Their first language is Spanish. And most of them are not Protestants, they are Catholics. So they have an orientation toward the Vatican as opposed to an orientation toward Protestantism, if you will, or white Anglo-Saxon Protestant type of cultural orientation. Now, in order for African Americans to be able to compete in an emerging multi-ethnic democracy, we need to define who and what we are.
There you go.
And use the principles of self-determination in order to navigate our way through the open society. We need our culture in order for us to have a moral compass. We need our culture in order for us to have a cultural map so that we can see where we're going and how we're going to get there. But what's the most important thing for any group to understand is if you don't know where you've come from, it's impossible to know where you're going. You know? So we all have to stand on our past, to stand on our history, not to dwell on it, but the past becomes prologue, and the past becomes the way by which we achieve unity. So again, within that celebration, we celebrate the culture, and we also celebrate family. Family is very important, especially in the African American situation these days. Why am I saying this? Because when we were in Africa, our family system was not the nuclear family. Our family system was the extended family. So our family system was basically the clan system or the kinship system. Now, once we were brought over here, and that culture and that family system was taken from us. And so that we were put on the plantations as individuals. And whenever the plantation owners or the plantation masters would see that we spoke the same language, then the people who spoke the same language would divide. For example, you came over and you were speaking Mandinka and said, well, no, we're going to ship you to another plantation so you won't be able to communicate with each other. So culture now becomes the basis by which you are able to unify. And given the situation that we have today, we really need to figure out a way by which we can use the elements of culture in order to bind our people together. Now, when we look at the African American family, the African American family is not in a good situation. Starting first of all with the fact that 65 to 70% of the families do not have a father at home. And not that we're saying that the matriarch is something negative, but we would not want to have a matriarch by default. We would want to have a matriarch by choice. Now, this whole idea of being matrilineal, that's the African way, because in traditional African society, you trace your lineage through the mother line. So African culture, you have a matrilineal society, whereas in the Western world, we have the patrilineal society. You trace your lineage through your father line, and your name is based on your father's surname, right? But in this situation, we have too many families where there is no father at home, and oftentimes people do not even serve as surrogate fathers. You know, you might have an uncle or a cousin or something, or an in-law who could perhaps serve that role, and oftentimes that doesn't happen either, you know. So we need to put a strong emphasis on family unity, family values, and real simple things like eating together,